So thank you all so much for joining. And we are in our third session of the Roadmap to Happiness. I just want to check that, and thank you to Sunny so much, is I believe yesterday you may have gotten a reminder email from me. Is that right? A homework email? Okay, great. If you were here last week, if you're on the list, I'm going to be sending those out midweek. I sent it a little bit later than I had intended, but it's a little prompt because I give these little mini homework assignments. And what I like to do is it triggers you in the middle of the week because people go from class to class and some people are not doing that much in between. And this way you get a little email. I used to do this with a class I had in Santa Cruz for years, and they get this reminder email to say, are you watching your mind? How's your meditation practice? This particular one was about using some of the tools of perspective. Okay. I asked you to work this week with reframing gratitude and kindness and generosity, and just looking at how they move through your week, how they move through your life like that. Are you able to choose from that healthier coping mechanisms? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that and go on to some of the other pillars of joy and the obstacles that prevent us from really lathering in those pillars in a sense. Okay. So let's take a moment to just set our motivation and find ourselves in a proper space for the class. Thank you so much again for showing up. And you're all so well versed. You've all got your cameras on. So thank you so much. Take a moment if you'd like, find a comfortable posture with the spine as extended as possible. Most of you are familiar with meditation posture. Lightly close your eyes. Begin to deepen your respiration. And just begin to follow the breath, just a normal, natural breath, to allow your mind to settle down from all the distractions of our everyday life. I just want you to take a moment to think about, again, we were just briefly talking about perspective. During these challenging times, it's a huge help in our maintaining a joyful attitude. So just based on that, think about right now that we have met the Dharma. We've come in contact with some sort of spiritual path that is completely available to us. Everything from the very beginnings, like the ABCs of Dharma, to the highest completion stage of Tantra, is available to you right now in this particular life. Buddhism says there are other times, other periods when Tantra will not be taught. But right now, due to Shakyamuni Buddha manifesting 2,600 years ago and teaching, the entire path is there for us. It doesn't get any better than that. Just breathe that in for a moment. Consider that as far as lending perspective right now to any challenges you've had this past week. What are those challenges? What's your mind telling you? Is there a way to reframe it more positively? And one way very helpful is to set a positive motivation. And you can do it at any time of the day, many times a day is available to you. So in this tradition again, we would love to be able to benefit all living beings fully, perfectly, but it's challenging as a human. If we become a Buddha, then we'll be able to do that. It doesn't mean we don't help along the way, even from a limited perspective, but imagine if you were a highly realized being, how you'd be able to help. So if you'd like that idea, please include it in your motivation and take a moment now, directing the mind in a most positive way, set that intention for our time together and all the activities of the rest of your day. Some things, additional things now I'd like you to consider about perspective. Some of these things we've talked about a little bit before. Think about perspective allowing us this. 3 situations. Pause. Just think if you insert a pause. Number 2, reflect. What's happening? I have a story going about something. What's happening? Can I reflect and consider? Is this story true? Think if you could apply this right now to a challenging situation of the past week. Just place yourself there for a moment. You're either talking to someone, or you're in a certain situation, or your mind's ruminating about something. Can you insert a pause right now? As if you're in the situation, what would happen if you just push the pause button? Which means you would stop the rumination. You would pause the stories you're creating for a moment. Number 2, consider those stories. Consider what's happening. Are we considering the other person at all? If we're involved with another person? Are your stories so accurate? Number 3, can you let go for a moment? Can you just let go of the situation for a moment? Like, for instance, if you were facing active death, in the active process of dying, would you be worried about this situation right now? Would you be as involved in it as you've been, or as upset from it as you've been? With your respiration, as much as you can, when you exhale, let it go. Meaning, let go of the turmoil, if you can. And when you inhale, You're simply bringing in healthy perspective to help you act in the face of this problem or issue in the most practical, beneficial way. From perspective, let's consider you see your situation and all those involved in a larger context. So, possibly from a more neutral position. Maybe consider for a moment the many conditions and circumstances that may have led to this situation. Are there others involved? What do you think their stories are? And can you shift from an I, me, mine perspective in this situation to we, us, ours? Think about it with we, us, and ours. So please take a moment and bring yourself back in your space. Slowly, when you're ready, please open your eyes. Just want to review, and some of you, we've done this class before for some people. I just want to give you the whole perspective of pillars of joy and the obstacles. Again, the pillars of joy and the obstacles. So thank you. Sunny's put some things in the chat about the Book of Joy, the link to that. Thank you so much. And then she's mentioned that next meeting, the 25th, and I think they had some appointments on the 25th if people wanted to meet. They have a thing with Shanti Deva of time with the teacher or something, so you can talk with them about that. And she's got recordings of previous classes. Thank you so much, Sunny. So Naga, can you hear now? There's a comment from Naga. She can't really hear.
I can hear you little now, but during the meditation, I couldn't hear.
Okay, is your sound up and everything?
Yeah, I checked.
Can everyone hear me? Or is there a problem? Okay, everybody's okay. Okay, thank you. So let me go through these pillars. Again, there's pillars in a sense of the mind and those of the heart. Of the mind, we've got number one, perspective. Today, we're going to really look at humility and humor and acceptance. And those are all what we call kind of pillars from the mind, our perspective. How is our mind in dealing with things? When we get to the pillars of the heart, we come to forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, and generosity. So here's the way they can relate to some obstacles to joy in a way. I mean, they're not all perfect matches, but if you suffer from fear, and they all kind of really layer onto these very negative mind states and negative situations, or situations we may view as negative, they all can apply. But here's some ways to look at is when you suffer from fear, stress, and anxiety, perspective is a huge help for that. Huge help for that. Okay? Frustration and anger, another obstacle. Okay, we're going to talk about humility today. It's a great help with frustration and anger. Okay? For sadness and grief, the obstacles to joy of sadness and grief, humor is wonderful. Another obstacle to joy is despair. And something that's really helpful with this is the fourth pillar of the mind, acceptance. Acceptance. Now here come four additional obstacles. Loneliness, something that can help with that, or really humor is fantastic things, but forgiveness can also be really, really helpful. That's the first pillar of the heart. Another obstacle to joy, as we know, is envy and jealousy. Envy and jealousy. Gratitude is the antidote to those. Fantastically helpful. Another obstacle, suffering and adversity. Suffering and adversity. Compassion is the way through to these. And the last obstacle to joy can be illness and a fear of death. Generosity can layer, as well as all the other perspectives can be helpful. All the other pillars of joy like that. So also, generosity of spirit can sometimes take away that fear of death. And that was one of the things I also mentioned to you this week in the homework was we had gratitude in there and kindness and generosity. So I just want to ask you for a moment. This past week, I just want a couple of comments, please, of how did it go? Did anybody remember the pillars? Was anybody using the exercises? Any comments anyone would like to say? Please.
I had a simple one for gratitude.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, who was first speaking?
I'm not sure if it was me.
Is that Ross?
It is.
Okay, how about Ross and then Sheil? Thank you. Ross, please.
I had an interesting thing this week with gratitude and reframing, and it was such a simple one, which was the cold and feeling, we're in Maine here, and feeling the whole 0 degrees outside and cold deep into my bones and kind of the whole nasty cold. But then also the simplicity, when I'm sitting against the window and feeling the cold in our old house versus I can turn the heat up and I have all these blankets and I'm actually really quite snuggly, even though I can experience the cold. And I just really thought about how insanely nasty hard it is for people that can't get warm enough and how much that hurts. And the whole warming center thing and the, watching each degree on the thermostat, like it's gonna break you. And just feeling like for all the other stuff that's wrong and for all the little cold in the bones, I can turn the thermostat up a couple of clicks and I've got unlimited blankets. And that was really nice to think about this week.
Wow, that's very, very helpful. That's wonderful to hear you working that way. Because we know there's a lot of people living on the streets, and certainly where I'm living, there's tent areas like, and granted, it's not as cold in California where I'm living, but it has gotten cold and they're outside and it can be raining. And the biggest thing for homeless people is trying to get washed. Also, one of the big things for them is trying to stay clean and have a shower, let alone their housing and food issues and things like that, and fear, danger, things like that. But we have these tent cities, as you know, in California. And yeah, so it's good to hear about turning the thermostat up. I know it's been extremely cold in the Northeast this winter. I'm so sorry. I've somehow escaped that, even though I don't mind the cold. But I just remember when I lived at Vajrapani in California in the Redwoods in the winter, nothing was heated appropriately and nothing was very well insulated. So I had a wood stove in my little cabin and it worked fine. But the thing is, if I was out all day and got home at 11 at night, if I wanted the heat, most of it had gone out. So I would have to stoke it up and it would take at least a half an hour till it would start really generating some heat. And so I remember when I moved to Milarepa, which is when I met Ross in 2007 and 8, people were saying, how are you living? It's so cold in Vermont and it's, all these horrible things and whatever. And I said, well, you go in the house and if it's cold, you just turn up the thermostat. I was so delighted, it was so easy for me. Like, so I do hear you, Ross. So I do hope you guys, you and Kelly stay warm. Thank you. Sheil, please, how's it going? Sheil, can you unmute? Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, it was really cold here yesterday. Lots of snow. But what I wanted to share was I was having some trouble with my neighbor, and I actually had decided I wanted to just sort of cut ties, and we were really good friends before. And there was something that she did, like she reached out to me after a while by just a text. And so we had this relationship where it was like, not like before, but we would say hello to each other if we bumped into each other. And it was a strange relationship because we're so close to each other. And so her birthday is today, but I thought it was on Saturday. So in the spirit of kindness and generosity, thought about what you talked about last week. And because we live so close to each other, I just don't want any sort of negative energy between us, because I come home to this space every single day. So I thought, I'm going to, like, I remembered all the kind things she did for me in the past. And there was one act of kindness and generosity she did that like basically saved my life. And I thought, I'm gonna just make her birthday special. So it was really cold on Saturday. So I texted her to ask her if it was okay for us to have like an online dinner. Like I would buy whatever she wanted to eat because I couldn't make it for her. So she said, and it was really, really cold. And she said, are you okay to walk to go get it? And I thought, you know what? Yes, I'm gonna be okay. Like I'm just gonna dress warm. I'm going to go get what she wants. And I got some flowers and I arranged in a vase, and I got like a little cake and just kind of staggered things for that evening. And we had like a 6-hour conversation. And I just feel so much better about our living arrangement and our connection. So I just wanted to share.
Please continue. Then please continue that working with those perspectives.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really hard for me to kind of, because I was really angry with her. because she did something that was so petty that totally devastated me. Like, I thought, we're grown women, like, how could you have done this? And
Yeah.
I just had cut her off. And then when I listened to last week, and yeah,
Right.
so thank
Well,
you.
thank you. No, thank you very much. So, because Kate's here, Kate, you were having the trouble with your neighbor, was that right? Okay, so I was just going to say, how's it going? I'm picking on you, but because just because Sheil had a thing with her neighbor. So, did you get the gift yet?
No, but I know what I'm gonna do. I just I just didn't do it yet. And it's not a time sensitive thing.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking about, like, is that something I could do for other people? And then I thought, my problem isn't with her. My problem is more with the fact that I wouldn't consider to do it for people I don't have any connection to whatsoever in this building. So then I thought maybe what I should really do, since I have to consider my own mind, and that's really the whole problem, is that, like, if I can honestly say, I'm not really that hard up with her. I've sort of figured out the situation, and yeah, I could do something nice for her. But I am hard up and not caring about people I don't know much more. That maybe I should think about some way of doing it for, like, building. And then
That's amazing. That's
since
quite
you-
amazing.
may I mention one other thing I experienced this week, since you brought it up? I was
Yes.
trying to think about joy in general, because I mistake joy as myself being manic. And for a long time, I've been like, it's wrong to feel this way because I feel like this is a manic state and it's really bad. And how could I be feeling this way when I have all these things that I feel like should be suffering? I must be like insane or something. But then after I was like reading that book and thinking about some of these things, I was like, no, you know what it is? I just have like almost immediate access to tons of joy and I don't need anything to do it. And it's just like available to me. But the world isn't like that. So I always feel really awkward, like to come into a work meeting and I just feel happy as anything you could ever think of. And I just don't, where I go or how it is, even though in a class like this, I could be very serious. But anyway, that's the end of it, except to say the fact that I resonated with what you said at the beginning, because I'm starting to feel really connected to the idea that, like, the biggest suffering is that people don't have access to this knowledge of the possibility that you could feel really good anytime you want to. And
That's
people
right.
won't believe you if you told them that,
That's right.
or people
Yeah.
think they should be upset a lot, or they should be at work and unhappy and all sorts of other things. So I don't really mention it. You picked on me, so that's what you get.
Why, thank you. Anyway, it's impressive. And first of all, Sheil, thank you for what you've been doing. Fantastic. I just segued to Kate because it reminded me about the neighbor. And Kate, I think it's great about equanimity to say, wow, I'm really not treating anybody I don't know kindly. You're not alone. That's the world. We take care of those we know and we like, and people that do good stuff for us, happy to do stuff for them. But people we don't know and people we don't like, people that may have made a mistake and interfered with our agenda, kind of causing harm in some way, we never want to help them. So opening your heart to that equanimity is a great exercise like that. And the other thing about joy, what you just said, it's not about a mania. It's a deep inner contentment is where you're coming from, a balanced mind state. So the thing is, the planet's struggling right now. And I'm around a lot of people that have been struggling and things. And so it doesn't have to topple me. And I don't also have to feel like, oh, everything's great for me. I'm at the Dharma. What's wrong with you? Like, it's not like that. It's a very balanced perspective of I have meaning in my life and it gives me a zest. But the thing is, part of that meaning is opening up a broad perspective for my mind to say, what's going on for other people? How can I help? What's going on for other people? How can I help? So the joy motivates me to do it and gives me a positive foundation to stand on to come. So they're not coming in contact with me and I'm kind of like, well, what do you want now? What is it? Or I only have 10 minutes. What's going on? I'm kind of like, hey, I might say to someone, I only have 10 minutes now, but it's from that joyful perspective. Let's talk now, but maybe we can make some more time later, longer time later. Does that make sense? Yeah, so you don't want to get into like an elated, which is very superficial, that kind of mania, that it's just a fleeting happiness. We get, you see all of us on the roller coaster, you have something to look forward to. Your family's going on a holiday. I had a friend recently, they went to some island for the long weekend. They, warm and whatever, they escaped the snowstorm and wherever it was. And it was all this, so looking forward to it. So looking forward. And then there was some glitch and one of the kids couldn't make it. And then it became this whole, hysterical kind of negative, our trip, and we never get to do it. It became a really negative thing when it's like, okay, there's going to be obstacles. But if you come from that joyful place, we're always on the roller coaster, the up and down. We don't get what we want. And then suddenly, so that's superficial happiness. Oh, the beach holiday. That's a superficial happiness that creates the mania that doesn't.
And the only thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, I may have just miscommunicated insofar as that's not what I'm experiencing. What I'm experiencing is what you said. Joy is energizing. It's motivating. Yes. It doesn't go away very easily, and it goes into places that you would think nobody should be happy here. Nobody should be excited about this.
Right.
Nobody should be excited about looking at a lemon that has no anything to you, or just show, okay, work meeting.
Right.
Nobody should be excited about work meetings unless you experience joy, unless joy is present. And then who cares where you are or what you're doing, because there's people there and there's all sorts of things. But what I'm trying to say is I've mistook joy as mania, not I mistook mania as joy.
Okay.
And the reason for that is society doesn't actually talk about joy very much or give you much of a sense of what that might be like, or even that that's a possibility, but it's not as conditioned, since they're always selling us a conditioned type of thing.
Well,
but anyway, the contemplation was just
society,
to say that I was reflecting on this week. So,
okay.
And I hate, I don't like being misunderstood, but I didn't want to give you the wrong impression that I was trying to say like chocolate was the thing that was the best thing in the world or something. That's
sure,
not
no
really.
Problem. No problem. I didn't mean to misunderstand. Sorry about that. It's more about, I think people can enjoy a business meeting depending on what they're working on. And I think our culture, the reason we don't really understand joy is it's always something external that we need to get or have, or, we're always comparing to someone else or seeing what, so I think there is a big mistake, just like you said, about society. Absolutely. So that's what I love about the Dharma, where it helps us rebalance to say, what is joy? How do we get there? What's really going on? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's go into, we're going to talk about humor and humility and humor first. Humility and humor. Now, here's these two words, humility and humor. They even sound a little bit the same because they come from the same Latin source, humus, from the earth, from the earth. Humility brings you back down to the earth, sometimes with a thud, right? And humor also, like the ability to laugh at yourself, really brings you back to earth, I find, very much so. So let me talk a little bit more specifically about these. When we have a wider perspective, we have a natural understanding of our place in the huge scope of all that was, all that is, all that will be. Okay, this naturally leads to humility. Okay, a recognition that as human beings, we can't solve everything. We're not going to be perfect all the time. We can't control every aspect of our lives. And here's the other thing is, we need others. Okay, and Buddhism very much talks about interdependence. We need others. So absolutely. So this is where humility comes in. And for those of you that are subjected to arrogance, pride, haughtiness, I'll call it, those kind of things, this is a big practice for you. So we want to definitely understand that interconnected with all beings, interconnectedness. It's something interesting I'm finding now because of what we call in the pandemic, the supply chain. And you're noticing that, you go to the supermarket, and this has happened the entire pandemic. It first started with what, toilet paper? There was no toilet paper for months. Okay. But still now you go to the store. Okay. I mean, this is something I'm finding in California because it's so expensive out here, but you go to the store and like, initially I was kind of like, well, why don't they have the thing that I need? Now I'm used to it. I just know that I go to the store, maybe I'll find that thing, the product that I have been buying for years, but more often than not, it's not there. And I now accept that. So we're going to talk about acceptance later in the class, in the course. But again, you know, you see what's going on with the supply chain. So like I'll show up and then if it's there, I'm excited. But I'm now more like, it's okay, but it does bring me back down to the earth. And sometimes I'll ask a salesperson there, oh, do you have any? But I realize we're connected in this together. And sometimes they'll say to me, you know, everyone's been asking, we haven't had those for several weeks now. We're waiting. So suddenly we're in it together, the two of us. Like, but because of kindness, because I'm going to throw kindness in, I will then say to them, oh, okay, I understand, no worries at all. And that must be really hard for you because everyone's asking you. And then suddenly we have connection because I just empathize with their situation, right? I'm not any great being, I'm just saying there's connection. We need others to do this. For me to, be in the grocery store, let's say, or whatever store, I was just in a mattress store. I've never bought a mattress before, right? I purchased a cheap mattress the other day. I was really like, but the thing was I was looking, I didn't even know what to look for. But fortunately they let you lie down on them. So you can just at least get a feel. But the guy was so nice when I just first started looking that I went back to that store because he was so nice. And I came in and as soon as I walked through the door and he was on the other side, he recognized me. I mean, I stand out pretty clearly, but he immediately was like, hey, and connection. Because him showing me and doing what he had to do was pulling out mattresses and, you know, and then me wanting to give him a sales, we were connected, interdependence. We need others. So suddenly it was helpful and he was super happy to help me, you know, discount, whatever he did. Just, it was a very nice experience, I think, for both of us. So why not have that experience, especially right now in these challenging times or any time, because it lends to joy. So please practice this week. Notice that, like, I come in and there's something I want here from the business meeting, from my neighbor, getting in the elevator, for those of you in New York, from you're in the supermarket looking for an item, you're in another store looking for an item. You know, instead of just what, again, the I, me, mine, what about the us, we, ours? Like there I am in the store saying to him, well, that must be really challenging. I bet everybody's asking you about, they think, and the guy was like, yeah, they are. They're all asking, when are we going to get it in? And when are we, you know, things like that. So, you know, I came back to that store another time. This is the grocery store. And then what they did is one of these items, at one point, remember when there was no rubbing alcohol because everyone was making hand sanitizers in the beginning of the pandemic? You couldn't buy rubbing alcohol, you know, to save your life. So I had a relationship with a guy at the pharmacy. Like I knew him many times. Hi, how are you doing? Just buying whatever, you know. But every time I go in, no rubbing alcohol. Months went by. So finally, after several months, I'm at the counter with him and said, hi, I just wondered, do you have any idea when you're going to get, you know, alcohol? And to what he did is he leans into me and he says, I have a stash behind the counter. He had a stash behind, he had like one case behind the counter. I don't know, I guess he just, it was like they said, if a customer really asks and really needs it, you can sell one to them. You know, they weren't, you know, he sold me one. He said, would you like one? I said, like, again, connection lends to joy. He didn't have to do that, you know, connection, that interdependence. So please think about that this week. When can I think about their experience? You know, when is it I'm coming in wanting something, but here's the we, the ours, the us. Like what's their experience? Really, really helpful. Really, really helpful. So arrogance, I believe, comes from insecurity. It also says that in the Book of Joy. Arrogance comes from insecurity. Think about it. Needing to feel bigger than others comes from the nagging fear that we are smaller. Okay? So if we're acting superior, if we're feeling superior, okay, that tends to separate us. That's the last thing we need on the planet now is more separation. Okay? I know we can distance, but again, you don't need to be mentally separated from people. Humility allows one to be approachable and connected. Really helpful. From Desmond, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, sometimes we confuse humility with timidity. You know, people that are timid and shy. Humility, and he says, is the recognition that your gifts are from God. Okay, because he was Christian. Humility is the recognition that your gifts are from God. Humility allows us to celebrate the gifts of others, but it does not mean you have to deny your own gifts or shrink from using what God uses each of us in our own way. So he's putting it in a Christian context. Okay, but humility, it's like, I'm going to celebrate others' gifts, but I also have my own gifts. But because of that, I can celebrate what others are bringing to this and look at them and realize we're in the same pot. This is from a Tibetan prayer now. Whenever I see someone, may I never feel superior. From the depth of my heart, may I be able to really appreciate the other person in front of me. So this is, again, a practice also in equanimity. This is exactly what Kate was talking about, is realizing I don't treat the other people in my building that I don't know with any kindness or things like that. Fantastic. Suddenly I'm humbled and realizing they're just like me. Something that helps me deal with humility is if I'm struggling with people or feeling not connected, is I realize, and Buddhism talks about this a lot, just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, so does this person, just like me, just like me. And we really need that humbling, down to earth. Really, it is a prerequisite to humor. It is a prerequisite to humor. Okay, I'm just going to interrupt with this short 1.5-minute video of His Holiness and talking about, oh, did I lose it? Let's see if I can find it. I just had it.
Venerable Amy.
Yep.
From the 16 Guidelines program, they talk about humility as being the ability to learn from others. And I thought that was really a great definition.
Definitely. Definitely. That's wonderful. Absolutely. I'm so sorry. I just lost let me see if I can find, this is not the right one. I have another video I wanted to watch. Let's see if I can get to that. I had it all set up, but, oh, here we go. Okay. This is Holiness. And I will share my screen and bring this up.
This is the world's first reusable cotton swab. It removes up to 5 times more excessive wax.
Okay, hang on. Here we go. So I just want to check, can you see that? If anyone wants to unmute for a second to let me know, you can, not about the flatulence I see across the top of the screen, but we're going to watch this video.
Yes, we can see it.
Wonderful. Okay, here we go.
I never consider myself as something special. If I consider myself something different from you, like I'm Buddhist, even more, I'm His Holiness Dalai Lama, or even if you consider I'm Nobel laureate, then actually you create yourself as a prisoner. I forget these things. I simply consider I'm one of the 7 billion human beings. We are mentally, emotionally, intellectually, we are same. When in aeroplane, sometimes this gas problem comes, then you see, difficult to let out. So occasionally, you see, look around. Then realize. Make some kind of pledge. Now on, I must make a new person. Same body, but new person.
I have to thank you so much. I have learned much from meeting you today. I have learned, for instance, that we're all on the same road
Yes.
with the ultimate goal,
That's right.
but we're all different travelers.
And also same experience of gas.
So the thing that's interesting is first His Holiness saying, I'm just one of the 7 billion on the planet, like just an ordinary being like that. And then he goes right into humor. So he's got the humility right into the humor. You know, we all have wind at times, right? We all have gas at times. I love that he can just laugh at himself, laugh along with us. He disarms people. I've had the good fortune to meet His Holiness several times in person. One time I had an interview with him for a half an hour due to Lama Zopa Rinpoche's kindness. That's how I got the interview for a project for Rinpoche. So, and immediately His Holiness, I think, knows that people are completely nervous in front of him. Like he's larger than life in some ways, and he's very down to earth. So he uses humor a lot in the interview, a lot of laughing, and it really warms you up and kind of relaxes you. So think about humor in your own life. Please think about it this week. When is it appropriate? Again, appropriate humor. When does it work that you can insert some humor after I've already dealt with, I'm no different than these people? You know, you might have a thing in your mind of somebody at work that you're struggling with that's a jerk and have a thing, well, he's always like that, he's stupid, but really check. Because as a human, we all make mistakes. So in some ways I have to go back and think, you know, back to the we, us, ours, and I want to be happy and I don't want to suffer, just like this person. We're really the same in that grounding. If you think somebody's really a jerk and really harming people, and when we talk about terrorists, things like that, I just sometimes see them as more confused than other people, right? So as a result of that, I can generate compassion. You know, rather than making them, you know, out there, terrible, horrible, other, that creates more duality and that separates us. Not only does the more duality and holding on to the us and them, not only creating that, but it goes completely against the whole grain of emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality, which is why we suffer in the first place, because we don't have a direct perception of it. We don't see things directly, accurately, truly, the way they really are. So all of this helps me with humility of bringing me back down to earth. And then from there, can we find the humor when it's appropriate again, when it's appropriate, the ability for me to laugh at myself. So helpful, so helpful. But again, and introducing that to others at the right time, the humor. You know, when does a really tense experience, as we've all been in, can you sometimes layer it with humor? And I've done that in meetings and different things like that. And, you know, yesterday, there has been, the last couple of days at Land Medicine, there's been some challenges, you know, and just looking at who's been targeted and how, like, you know, different, could people be kinder and what's going on? And then yesterday, just talking with a friend of mine involved in the process, and we found a way, we were just started laughing about, like, yeah, look at, here we are on the merry-go-round again. We've done this work so many times together, and in a very positive way. So we somehow found our way to humor, and just, it cut the whole drama of what was happening. But again, it's got to be at the appropriate time and the appropriate thing, but it's really helpful. Let me go through some other things about humor. And think about humility and humor once again, about the bringing us down to earth, okay? So again, the Latin word for earth or soil, it doesn't get any more real than that when you think about humility and humor. What's everything built on? Are those things of I'm just as good as everyone else. So I'm not necessarily going to, sometimes I'll say I'm muddling along like everyone else as a human. Yes, make mistakes, but also we have Buddha nature, which makes us fundamentally good. So that's in everyone as well. That's in every stranger. That's in every person that is difficult to deal with. Also that fundamental goodness. So keep trying to remember that this week. So with humor, is it any surprise that we have to have a sense of humility to be able to laugh at ourselves, and that to laugh at ourselves reminds us of our shared humanity. So there's humanity also from the word earth or soil. They're all from the same source. So they're all connected. Again, is it any surprise that we have to have a sense of humility to be able to laugh at ourselves, and that to laugh at ourselves reminds us of our shared humanity? Humor has the ability to break tension. It breaks down barriers. It brings people onto common ground. It can build trust, community, and communication. This is from a saying, I forget where this came from. I think it was in the book. Laugh and the world laughs with you. Snore and you sleep alone. So again, when you laugh at yourself, it takes away the pompousness. It also takes away the seriousness. Look at His Holiness, how he can just make a joke about a very ordinary bodily function. He's just like the rest of us, even though we know he's not on some level. Okay, but think about when you're taking yourself too seriously as well, if that's one of the things you fall into. You know, that has been something I've done in the past, and I realize it's really kind of glum and heavy. And, for people around me, now there are times you need to be taken seriously, no question, but understand the balance. Understand the balance. If I'm taking myself too seriously, okay, it can get very heavy. Okay, humor though makes everything easier. Okay, including my ability to accept others and accept whatever life's going to bring. Okay, so I want to do a little bit of our group breakout sessions. And let me just see. Okay, we've got 18. So we're going to do 6 groups of 3. And what I'd like you to do is dealing with humility and humor. What would be helpful in this past week? What kind of issues in your life that you think, how would you like to bring those into your life? Do you need to turn them up in your life? Are they operating pretty well? Is power and pompousness and arrogance one of the things you fall into? So if you can talk a little bit about what kind of obstacles, again, to joy are showing up for you, and how would you like to use humility and humor as some tools, especially this coming week, but I would say in your life, if these are some things that you need. I am gonna assign you right now. Let's see if I can do any better. Okay, we're gonna do, got it. Try to assign different people. Okay, just about there. Okay, so you'll have 10 minutes and then we'll come back. And I'd like to hear what's working, what hasn't been working related right now to humility and humor. Okay, so here we are, Sunny. Do you want to unmute? Anything you want to say about humility and humor?
First, I would like to pause the recording.
Okay, you can. Okay. Here, I think everybody's back. Okay, welcome back. Any insights? Anything surprising from the work, from the humility and humor discussions? Anything humorous?
I liked the idea that humor can make other people feel comfortable, which is one of the things we talked about in our breakout group. And that you made the point of when you see somebody really struggling with something difficult, that you can release them with a little bit of humor. So we were talking, and I used the example about being disabled, and frequently running into people with super uncomfortable questions about what's the matter with you, what's the deal. And so, just being able to release them of, I've got a wheelchair because I'm in it for the parking or whatever it might be, gives them just that little space. And that was an interesting notion of why you would purposefully do that. And I found that really intriguing as far as the connection between the two.
That's really helpful because it does often, as we say, it breaks the ice. Ice is hard and cold and sometimes unpleasant, and especially if you fall on it. So the humor is that nice little soft cushion. It's like that little turning the thermostat up and getting your warm blanket. Absolutely.
And I enjoyed Ross's humor. He needs to take his show on the road. I was, Mrs. Calling.
So wait, were you guys in the same group?
We were, yeah.
Oh, great. Because I've known both of you quite a long time, so that's great. And Ross has a great sense of humor, and you do as well, Jeff. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Nice. That's nice.
Did a lot of laughing.
It really does help. Yeah.
Did a lot of laughing. We laughed almost the whole time.
Yeah.
And I feel better. And I feel better.
Hey.
The actual act of laughing.
It's the best medicine, isn't it? It's really, but seriously, in the right context. And I think there's some people that don't laugh enough. I've had periods in my life I felt like devoid of laughter, and I was like, what's happening? I mean, lately I've been in a little mode of that here. It's a pretty big job here right now. So I've been really like, I have not lost my sense of humor. I was actually joking with myself today about something. And I think it's important because it keeps the lightness. Again, we are trying to get enlightened, not enheavied. So it keeps that lightness for me, to remind myself, the other thing, the context is, if I remember emptiness a lot, I was just watching something else with His Holiness, and His Holiness was saying something about, as soon as I get up, I try to remember that the appearances are not accurate. How reality is appearing to me is not actually the way it exists. And it's just so helpful to have that layering. We all have a lot of challenges, there's no question, but just kind of posing. And, I was saying to my friend who's doing this work with me at LMB, Land of Medicine Buddha, and on one level, you can really get mired in how hard the pandemic's hit this center. And then I went, well, all we can do is we'll give it our best shot. We'll do our best. And what better thing could we be working on than this incredible Dharma center that can benefit infinite beings? So I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. It doesn't mean that the day-to-day work's all that fun, but I'd rather be doing it for this than really anything else. And so it brings this lightness in. And then if I'm thinking, why do I have to see it as just heavy? That's just one view. There's work to do. Okay, well, we all do our work, and there's work to do, and you just do what you can do. Every day, that's what I do. And then I let go and try to take breaks when I can. Because Naga added a comment in the chat. What about self-compassion? And also deciding who we surround ourselves with. So there's two things: self-compassion, which is in the midst of all of our caca, in the midst of all that we're doing, is you also need kindness to yourself. It's a huge step. It's a huge part of it. Please don't forget that. It's a really, really important part. Okay, but she's also mentioning, who do we surround ourselves with? It's another big component. Who are the influences around you? Here we've got Ross showed up with Kelly, his partner, which is great. And Kelly, I don't know that well. I'd love to get to know you more. And I think, I know a bit of Ross's sense of humor, which is great. So I have a feeling from what the lovely things I'll share that Ross has told me about Kelly is I just have a feeling they have a nice way they support each other with Ross's disabilities, okay, which are very challenging. So I just think I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they don't get into it at times with frustration, but there's a way, and like, can we do that with each other? But who are you surrounding yourself with? Some healthy influences, people that have a healthy perspective, and it is challenging. Just talking with someone at the break of, when you went into the breakout groups, about when you're around someone who's really challenging. How do we want to show up when we're around someone who is incredibly negative, incredibly judgmental, incredibly raging, right? So again, back to last week's exercise, kindness and generosity. Okay, generosity of spirit is, and I have met with many people, and is I will offer this much time, and I know they're going to be really negative the whole time. We all have people in our lives like that. I'm going to give this much of my time. They really need to talk with someone and they just want to vent, and I'll offer that right now. Okay. But if it's somebody you're seeing regularly over and over and over, it could be somebody you're living with, and they go over and over into the negativity, there are better coping mechanisms. I have said to people like this I was living with, family members, people I will never cut out of my life, but we're just negative, is I give them a little bit of time. And then if they were trashing someone, I would either find a positive thing to say about that person and interject that. If I knew the person well enough that was getting negative, I might say to them, do you mind if we talk about something else? I'm kind of uncomfortable right now with the train of the conversation. I might interrupt them and just go off on a different topic. I have given them a little bit of time and then excused myself that I had an excuse that I needed to leave the room or go to the bathroom. So it interrupted, and when I came back, sometimes I could start on a new subject. So those are just little coping techniques I developed when you're dealing with somebody regularly who's overly a bad influence or negative. And all you can do is try your best like that. If it's someone that you're not really all that close with in your work scene, or somebody you don't have to be around a lot, there are times I just decrease the amount of time I was with them or was available for them, things like that. Let me talk about acceptance, and then I'll take some questions as well. So, and Naga, did that address some of the question you had? What about, because there are two different issues, self-compassion and then deciding who we surround ourselves with.
Yes. Because we talk highly about forgiveness. So if there's a misunderstanding, people, even for me, in the beginning of my Buddhism, I'm like letting people say anything, then treat you or take up your time. But then the last year I experienced how mean they become just because you didn't give a little bit extra time to them. And I had to disconnect from it and heal myself. And then these people are trying to come back. And then I'm like guarding myself. My friends.
Well, there's a thing with Buddhism. I will say it is helpful to have boundaries. Our teachers have boundaries. My teachers do. So I think it's helpful to set boundaries, like the techniques I just mentioned. I'm trying to come from compassion, but the fact to let the person go on and on with the negative speak, it's not good for them. But I'm not going to get on a moral high ground and say what I know is good for them. I'm just realizing, wow, this is really negatively affecting me. It's not good for them. I'll just have those thoughts and think of, okay, what can I realistically do with compassion to help kind of cut some of that? So I think you do the best you can.
Yeah, that's where I had to stop, because when they are trying to pinpoint your weak points or say negative, then my reaction is coming to say something to them. And then I didn't want it to go there. Right. So I had to kind of disconnect from those areas. Sure. I thought that was good practice.
Yes. No, it's tricky sometimes. Okay, I want to talk about acceptance. And again, just going back to humility and humor as pillars of joy. Again, humility, think about humility. If this is one of your things this week, this is the obstacle to joy is frustration and anger. Frustration and anger. So again, the homework this week, using humility, humor, and acceptance, but we're going to talk more about acceptance next week as well, but using humor, humility, humor, but think about if frustration and anger is something that has you riled this week. Humility is one of the antidotes. You know, you get pissed off, you're angry at this, you know, well, everybody's going through that. You know, I go into the supermarket, I'm angry, they don't have this product, whatever. Everybody doesn't have the product. Well, who do I think I am? Right? So then it kind of like goes, yeah, like, you know, then I can have connection. Wow, that must be hard. Everybody is stuck in the same traffic, right? As long as we're humans. Humor, what about sadness and grief? A lot of that on the planet right now. You might be having a very deep experience of depression. You just can't believe we're in the second year, like going through yet another year of this pandemic. Ending 2 years of this is a little bit much. We don't know when it's going to end, okay? We can joke. We can joke. Sometimes it's appropriate, it's okay. I mean, grief is an important part of loss and things like that, but sometimes we need the humor to break it up. Acceptance. From Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We are meant to live in joy. This does not mean that life will be easy or painless. It means that we can turn our faces to the wind and accept that this is the storm we must pass through. So I'd like you to also think this week about stress and anxiety. So we were talking about sadness and grief, frustration and anger. We've got a lot of things to work with, right? There's a lot of food for the course. But again, this is our planet right now, and everybody's going through these different things like this. So again, do you ever see the line from your stress and anxiety that comes from your expectations of how life should be? Right? We're not seeing what really is, but it has to be a certain way. So again, stress and anxiety come from our expectations of how life should be. Think about what you're not accepting. And it's interesting for me doing this Land of Medicine Buddha job. I've run a couple other centers, did a kind of helping to turn around other centers with a team of people, and centers that were struggling a little bit or not developed quite so. And I think I'm doing a little bit differently this time, because the other 2 times I was a workaholic the entire time. And now I'm kind of like, no, you know what? I think I need to go for a walk, and that, you know, this isn't really working the way I want it to go, but let me just have a little walk, take it, you know, get a little space, just a short break. Self-compassion. Again, there's my self-compassion break. Before we did self-compassion, the exercise of, and even with loving kindness, you know, what do I need right now? If I had a rough day with the center, or something really wasn't moving, or something, you know, what do I need right now? Like, let's go for a walk. Just get because it lends perspective. And for here in California, we're able to walk by the beach. Well, that's a huge help. You know, I look out at the ocean. Sometimes there's dolphin. Sometimes there's gorgeous sunsets like that. So just giving a little space like that, and letting go. What was the expectation I had? If I was upset from something, well, you had an expectation that this was going to sort itself, and, you know, oh, okay. And then it de-stresses. Okay. But give yourself a space for that. Symptoms of chronic stress are feelings of fragmentation, chasing after time, not being able to be present. Not being able to be present. We know that. Okay. So being more realistic, we can come to some sense of inner peace now, rather than always chasing after expectations and ambitions. So please fold that in as well, but we are going to talk more about acceptance. which is that fourth pillar of the mind before we go into the pillars of the heart next week. Please, any questions right now? Anything we talked about tonight, anything pertaining to your life? And what, again, homework, what I'd love you to work with, and I will send a message kind of midway. We've got humility, humor, acceptance. So can you work this week if you're finding frustration and anger getting activated? Is it sadness and grief? Or is it with, where did I just put my notes? Not that one. Oh, here it is. Do you ever, and some people are going into despair, hopelessness. Acceptance can help you with that. Again, accepting things for as they are. So work with those obstacles. Do you ever get hooked with those obstacles? Frustration and anger, sadness and grief, despair or hopelessness, applying when it's appropriate, humility, humor, and acceptance. So please, any questions? So Sunny just put in the chat some of the upcoming courses, Dharma office hours with me on the 25th, if anybody is signing up for that. I think you have to do it through the center. And she's got all the links for everything. Wonderful. Thank you, Sunny. Anything else? Any questions? Anything anybody wants to?
Can I just ask you by microphone? Is that okay? Rather than typing it in chat. I wonder what.
I'm sorry, Kate, I didn't get that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just ask you by the microphone. I was going to say, what problem do you think other people think you are really good at solving? And then two, does that cause you stress? I mean, it's kind of like, I've been thinking of work as people hire you to solve problems, right? They don't hire you to have a good time. They don't hire you. It's like, company has a problem. They think you can solve it. Does it work the same way for you? I mean, are you a good problem solver? But what stress does that add to your life to be a good problem solver of that type? Do you know? Because it's like, if you talk about turning around all these places, so that means you will face this type of problem because you're that kind of problem solver or something. I don't know. I don't know if that resonates for you.
I thought they hired me to have fun, frankly.
Oh, really?
That's why I thought I was here. I just found out yesterday that wasn't the reason they hired me. No, I'm joking. Humor. Yeah, no, basically, it is interesting when you have a certain MO, which I have in the organization of working with centers and running centers and helping some struggling centers and fundraising. And so that is something they call on me. There are times I've turned things down and said, I'm not available, I can't do that, or it's insurmountable, or it doesn't fit. The center, I didn't feel comfortable with the center people, that's fine, absolutely. So I'm not setting up an expectation, I'm doing my best. And actually this time I'm doing it differently. And there's actually part of me that can't do it the way I did it before. And I don't know if I'm being that successful, but I'm not attached to that. I know that we have a team, they're really good people. And we get on, we're really working through some stuff. Some of the stuff's really hard. We're working through even personal stuff that comes up. So I just feel like, let me commit as much as I can do with these folks because I really believe in this center. And I think I can see what an extraordinary place it is. I've known what an extraordinary place it's been. So I'm just going to keep going until either they tell me or my teacher tells me stop, or I decide, I need to do something else or take a break or things like that. And I do take breaks in this, in this time. I mean, right now I'm here trying to, really focus for the most part, but I teach for other centers and things, and I may be traveling, a little bit, but I'll still probably do the work online for LMB. Does that help, Kate?
Yeah, I was more kind of like a journalistic kind of curiosity of wanting you to talk about something really interesting about yourself. And I suppose maybe it could be framed in another way, like, what do you love about being you? Or what do you, Yeah, and like, what do you love about your situation? Because you talk about your situation a lot, and it's just curious. So you don't have to. I'm not going to lose sleep if you don't. I just thought it could spur you on to talk about something that's curious, you know.
Sure, no, I mean, you can ask me anything about myself. I don't so much for this class want to talk about myself, but the one thing I'll say that is great that I love about my life is that I'm a nun, a Buddhist nun. And that's
But
one thing. That's one thing.
what
I
is your
really love,
role?
and also that I love teaching. So I love really bringing a group of people like you together. I know a lot of you now for years. You're wonderful people. And I love that you show up and you're really trying and you're working with stuff. And some of you I've talked to personally a few, you know, many times. And I know what you're struggling with. And I just think you're all doing great. And I don't know all of you yet, but I'd like to meet those of you I don't know that well. So I love doing stuff like this. And I really love it doing it in person. And I love working with younger people too. So those are a few things. What else? Anything else that somebody's struggling with or challenged with, or please, Mary.
And in the book, they mentioned that in South Africa, they would have something called a necklace where they would put a tire around somebody's neck and fill it with gasoline and then light it on fire. And when it comes to, you know, and I've had some situations where I've been physically abused, and when it comes to that, you know, I just have like that's a stumbling block for me. Like how do you accept that that first of all, karma, that is your karma, and you did something for this to happen to you, and things are all interrelated and it's empty. But I get hung up, I get hung up on that. I don't know if that's going to be covered.
Part of it is I just think utter confusion. Like I have an issue with also people who abuse kids. So utter confusion. We're all confused as humans. That's the nature of being a human. And we have different veils of obscuration. And some people's veils are really, really, really thick and heavy. And the thing is, they need even more compassion, because think of the suffering they're creating for themselves. Right. So that's kind of how I try to rationalize or deal with it in my mind. Because what happens is if I get angry at them and hate them, or if I get completely depressed and turn in on myself and collapse over something like that, because it's
what I do. Like I'm like, poor me, like how did that happen to me, kind of, and then I get depressed about it.
Well, it's also hard. Is it separates the anger just torments me, doesn't torment anyone else. So again, in your situation, it's so unfortunate, and I'm so sorry. And then understanding karma, it's not blaming yourself at all. It's just saying, wow, something got created in my mind, past lives, that created this horrendous situation. But right now, I can continue to create positivity every moment. And I can continue to purify negative stuff. So stuff like that never happens to my mind stream again. That I never take a form that's going to go through that. That's kind of the best we can do. And learning what we're going to get into. But what we're going to get into with one of the pillars of the heart is forgiveness, which is hard, but it's again a big step.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you all so much. I'm going to close here, and I'd like to I want to thank you for all your time. And please, I'd like to roll this into the benefit, the merit, into all the people on the planet really struggling right now, mentally, physically, and all other ways. Can they have a better sense of being and well-being, and for COVID to disappear from the planet as quickly as possible, and all other pandemics and things like that, for the long lives of our precious teachers, for my dear friend Alea, who's passed away, may she quickly take a good rebirth to get enlightened, to benefit all. Venerable Punsok is a monk who's struggling in Israel from a brain hemorrhage, who's in a coma. And there's so many other people around the planet, like Ross, that are struggling. So for all of these beings, really dedicating to their well-being, to also help us get quickly enlightened so we can be of the most benefit to all living beings. Thank you so much. Thank you to Shanti Davis Center. Thank you, Sunny and Sheila, for hosting, and look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget your homework.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you so
Good
much.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.